Hello artists and welcome to Painting Level B. Let's get started. Alright, in front of me here I've got my sketchbook. I'm going to go ahead and get my name on the top here. Circle painting, put a B. I'm going to label 1, draw a line, and label 2. Alright, let's see what we're learning today. It says, I can know which brush size to use for details and which to use for big areas. I can use the right amount of paint, and I can draw then paint. All right, so first what we're going to do is in the top box, we're just going to draw a couple shapes because we're learning, one of my learning goals was to draw then paint. So I'm just going to draw some fun shapes at the top. All right, now that I have that, I'm going to go ahead. So I get lots of paintbrushes this time. I get small, medium, and large brushes. And I'm going to pick a size of brush that I think would be good for the shape I'm working on. I'm going to try out this one. And I'm going to go ahead and grab the paint. Now remember, this is tempera paint. So with tempera paint, remember, I don't need a lot, just a little bit on the end. It should not go all the way up to the top of the metal part. And then I'm going to paint inside the lines. I'm going to paint like a feather inside my lines. And since I didn't grab a lot of paint, I can go ahead and spread this out inside the lines. If I find that this brush is too big, I can always switch it out for a different brush. Or if I feel like my brush is too small, then I can switch it out for a different brush. You want to be comfortable when you're painting, right? But you want to make sure you're painting like a feather and being gentle, spreading out the paint so it's nice and thin. When I'm done with that color, I'm going to dip it to the bottom, touch it, and swirl it around. Wipe it off the side. Remember, tempera paint is already wet. It's not like watercolor. It's already wet, so I have to wash it, then I have to dry it. Now, I'm going to grab a different brush and try out a different brush. I'm going to grab my paint, just a little bit, not a lot. And again, I'm not pushing on the paintbrush. I'm treating it like a feather. Need to be a feather with my paintbrush. If I feel like it's getting dry, I can grab a little bit more, but a little bit at a time is all you want. You do not want big globs. And then you can change the angle of your paintbrush. Now, again, if I feel like my paintbrush is too big for the area I'm working in, I can always grab a different one. All right. I want a new color. I'm going to wash it out, wipe it off, and then dry it off. And put my brush back for another friend to use. All right, I'm going to do my last shape here. And paint inside the lines, grabbing just a little bit at a time. Moving my paintbrush around. I'm being a feather. When I'm treating my paintbrush like a feather, it is a lot easier to get inside the lines. If I push on the brush mark gets too big. Wash out my brush, wipe it off, dry it off. And now I wanted to try out a small brush here. And I'm just going to get a little bit of orange. And I'm going to do a small brush. Now, when you're painting like a feather, you can do little small lines. Or you could do things like dots, right? Little small things that look really nice when you paint like a feather. All right, let's take a look at mini art. So it says here that I need to plan by using a pencil, paint light paints, then dark paints in my color order, and then I need to let the paints dry and then paint the details. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take my pencil and I'm just going to draw some fun random shapes. I'm going to do abstract art, but maybe you want to draw something that you want. A little bit of movie magic. All right, now that I've got that all marked out, I'm going to paint my colors with the right size of brush. So maybe for these smaller ones, I'm going to try to paint inside the lines. And I'm going to try to use the right size of brush for the area I need. Remember, not using lots of globs. I feel like maybe that one was a little too big feel like I'll need to go smaller. I'm going to wash that out and grab a smaller brush. Sometimes flat brushes are really good for big areas, and a lot of times these pointy brushes are better for smaller areas. So I'm going to do another shape that's red. So I'm going to go ahead and paint. Remember, I'm being careful to be a feather, but then I'm also being careful to stay inside my lines. When I go to paint shapes next to the shapes I just painted, I'll need to be careful that the colors don't mix. Movie magic. And I'm going to get my yellow. Again, I'm being super careful when I'm painting right next to my orange here because I just painted it. And if I make a mistake and the color goes into, like the orange gets into my yellow, then what I need to do is I need to wait for the paint to dry, for the yellow to dry. And then when it's dry, I can paint right over it. Like, look, I just got orange in my yellow. Okay, that means I'm gonna have to wait for my yellow to dry, and then I can come back and paint right over and no one will ever know. Movie magic. Alright, so now that my yellow is mostly dry, I can go back, and as long as my brush is dry and my paint's dry underneath, I can go back and paint some yellow on top, and it will make it so I can't see that orange that I messed up on earlier. Alright, once my paint is dry, I can add details on top. So I'm going to take a small brush, and my orange is very dry. I know because it's not shiny, and when I touch it, it's not on my fingers. I'm going to take a color. Now, because tempera paint is opaque, that means you can't see through it, and it's really dark. I can paint details on top of whatever color I want, and I should be able to see them. So I'm going to do some detailed dots. I might do some detail lines, just something fun. I could even outline some things. As long as I'm painting like a feather, my details will be just nice. So I'm going to do some yellow on top of my purple, and watch. I can still see my yellow. Let's try that. There we go. I can see my yellow, and it's really nice even though it's on top of purple. Happy creating!